Hey everybody, I'm Patrick Conlon. I'm the Assistant Director at the Academy of Contemporary Music at the University of Central Oklahoma. So I'm the odd duck here. I'm mostly composer and musician. I've done a lot of film scoring and commercial work, and I'm starting to dip my toes back into what I was doing when I was a teenager and start doing some actual sound assets and music for video games. So what I want to talk about today with you all, because chances are, usually when you're hiring a composer or getting music from people, you're usually just getting kind of acting the same way you would if you're doing a film score. You're going to get like a 3-minute track that I'm guessing most of you are probably using like artlist.io and other kind of like aggregate sites that just have a bunch of sounds that you can grab. That's usually how most indies are doing it. And so I kind of want to talk about the areas where scoring and writing music for video games is actually different than it is for film and for other media. And basically the idea of that is one of the best things about music whenever you're doing it for any media, so film, if you're talking about like operas, really anything, is that anytime you add music to a scene, it creates a sense of linearity or a sense of time passing because there's a tempo to the music moves forward. If you pause music, it stops happening. So one of the greatest things about music is it creates a control of time passing in whatever art form you add it to. The issue with that is that video games is one of the most non-linear art forms that anyone uses. So basically you're trying to take a linear art form and apply it to a non-linear structure for essentially when to bang the music. Like when do you do that? For me, my entire scripting that I usually have to do if I'm working on a project is if something, play this MP3. That's basically my scripting language. And so the big thing for me when you're talking with developers, especially if you're working with indies, because if you have an actual sound engineer, this is probably going to be their job to work with the composer and say, just like with a film scoring composer, like, I want this emotion, we want this feel, we want it to sound like that, you deliver the assets, and then we'll figure out how to make it fit into the game. You're probably not going to have that if you're working with an indie. It's either going to be on the composer and the person who's creating all the sounds, or it's going to be on the developer who isn't necessarily a musician. So I wanted to give you kind of the cheat sheet of how I think about it when I'm talking to a developer about this is what I'm looking for to figure out how to put it together. And so I think of video game assets that I'm creating on kind of a spectrum between linear and non-linear. So fully linear, you're just doing a film score as a cutscene. The only thing you can do to a cutscene is skip it. It's not going to play back twice. The next closest to linearity would be like a moving wall or a timeline, so like a Mario game that has an actual time limit. That's really smart because then you know how long the queue needs to be, you can do the queue, but there's still the chance that you die, and then you just have to make a decision like, does the music start over or does the music continue? Because if the music starts over, it's really going to have a feeling of like you went back in time and started from an actual checkpoint. If the music doesn't start over, and you can see this, so Mario, the music always starts over. Donkey Kong, the music continues and you just pop out of the barrel. And so it gives this feeling, it actually changes how it feels to the player to die. So if you ever notice in Donkey Kong you die, it's like you just pop back out of the barrel. It's like, oh, it's cool. Like, I lost the balloon, whatever. In Mario, it's like, and like the thing pops up and it makes you wait for a second and then the music restarts and you're like, ugh. So the main thing that music does with these assets is it really changes how the player experiences it. And changing music is such a drastic thing that it's really the main thing, I'm a little biased in this, but it's the main thing that delineates when something new is actually happening. We really notice that almost more than we notice visual cues. And so further on the timeline, you have what I call like mission or quest-based scoring. And so if you're doing mission or quest-based scoring, basically you're creating a playlist and you know what order the playlist is going to play. You just don't know how long everyone's going to spend on each part. And so this is like, if you think about like a linear game, you could just stand in a cave and go make a sandwich for 20 minutes. And the music has to do something that works. But you know, okay, if they get to X spot, there's a place in which you have the actual player object reach, you know to bang the next music part. The last one is what I call event-based music. And so this is for open world games where you don't know what the player is going to do next. And so this would be something like a Skyrim game, for example. The most obvious event-based thing that happened, like how many people have played Skyrim in here? Okay, so a few people. So like the shtick of the game is that random dragons appear and then you have to kill them, and they happen at random. Just like you're walking, you're having a nice day, a dragon appears. The only thing that actually lets you know a dragon appears is you got dragon music. Like a little red dot would appear on the screen and you got dragon music. This drum line came in, it's like, oh crap, there's a dragon. The music cue is the only thing that showed that. And it's something you'll notice in almost all open world games. There is some sort of battle music, because the worst thing you can do to a player is kill them and they don't know why they died. Like the sniper shot that they never see coming is bad. It's why, like, if you've read those Twitter accounts like BioShock, the first shot always misses. All the like fakes that they do in first-person shooters and games to make it feel like you're better than you are, or like that the last bit of player health is actually like half of your health bar. So that then it's like, oh my God, I just survived. And it's like, no, you died like 5 times. We're just making you feel better about it. So when you have things like that, it's event-based rather than timeline-based. You're basically saying, if dragon, play dragon music. The issue with that is open world games are often super long, and so if you kill 80 dragons, then you have to hear dragon music 80 times. And if it's a really straight just MP3 of a track, this is really bad with battle music. So you have to play the same battle like 60 times. And like the older games did it, like Final Fantasy VII and stuff, it's like the same battle music every single time. And it's like, oh my God, this can't happen anymore. The old one was that everyone just turned the music off and then listened to like their own playlist. So how to get around that? So there's kind of 2 main things that are an issue when you're writing music for an open world game. One is, what are the possibilities for the storyboard? And so what I do is I basically make a player storyboard with whoever's making the game that reads like a choose your own adventure novel. Just so we can make decisions on like, if player decides to do this quest and move forward, when do we change the music? If player decides to leave, can they leave the cave instead of continuing deeper in the cave? Cool, they leave. Then what do we do? It's really as simple as that, but in a big game that becomes like 1,000 different decisions on when you switch music. And so the reason that's important is because music's one of the things that really drives dramatic tension in a game. It's something that like creates this sense of progression as things are happening. So it's like, you want your cake and you want to eat it too. You want the non-linearity of an open world game and of player choice and everything, but you also want to actually like have those moments of like real dramatic tension and storyline and all those things that are happening with that. And it's why a lot of open world games are actually kind of fake open world games. If you played The Witcher 3, The Witcher 3 is an open world game that has an exploration mode, and then there are quests that you do that suddenly it's really just like a mission-based game. And so it's those sorts of things that like figuring that out with the game developer on the front end so you know how to score it with music. So you can say like, okay, this is really just, we're straight up scoring this. So I can do this nice epic thing that builds and then there's a sad moment and that person dies. I know they're dying within 10 seconds of you reaching this spot, so I can have like the stinger happen at that point. The other issue that you run into is, how do you create enough music that someone's willing to listen to it for 200 hours? Because just creating the amount of assets to create these long ones is a big issue. And so one thing that I use is using Fmod. Wise has similar stuff. Fmod's just a little easier for this particular thing. Anyone doesn't know those are middleware. They're like baby programming language for composers who don't want to get like scared in Unity or something. And so one of the things that Fmod has is that you can basically create your own, it reads it as MIDI data, but basically you can do a small amount of coding in Fmod. What I usually do is I call it like dramatic tension or intensity. And then what you can do is you can create layers of music that have probabilities of banging. So basically you can create a 2-minute piece that has 10 things that are happening, 10 different musical layers. And then you can say, okay, in intensity 1, which we're going to say is like you hanging out in this area, we're only going to have these 3 layers are all playing. This layer plays all the time. That's our kind of ambient backing track. Here's a string track that like every 30 seconds has a 25% chance of happening. Here's another track that has a 50% chance of happening. And you create these kind of procedurally generated musics that a composer has made so they're all going to sound good on top of each other. And then you can say, if battle, play battle drums on top of it. So this is a thing where you can have like, there's that causal cue, there's that like, I hear drums, I know something's trying to kill me. I hear drums stop, I know I'm safe. But you can have it apply to different musics at different times, so you're not stuck listening to the exact same battle music every time. The other thing with this is then you can add intensity by just layering those things on top of it. So it's like, say you get to like something that's approximating a boss fight or something where the intensity is supposed to ratchet up. You say like, when player reaches their change intensity level to 4, and then suddenly you get all these like horn stingers and like there's a beat that starts coming in and these things have higher probabilities of happening the closer you get to it. So you can have this thing like, so you've got this like dum da dum da dum da 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 dum da dum da dum da 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 da, whatever's happening with that. So you have these like string stingers that are like bring, bring, bring. And it's like, oh, that sounds, you can't have that just happen for more than like 30 seconds at a time. It's going to get really annoying. But you could have like, for 2 minutes leading up to it, there's like 1% chance per second. So like it'll happen maybe once every minute and a half of a bring. And then as you get closer, it starts to, the probability goes up, it starts to happen more. You get that sense of dramatic tension actually increasing. So you kind of get that like, as the character's going there, you get this sense of dramatic tension increasing, and it's actually being applied to how the player is moving.
How do you synchronize these tracks? Are they synchronized, or is it just like an ambient string track that'll sound good at any point during the intensity track?
Yeah, so the way you do it is Fmod actually keeps the timeline the same, and so you have it so it's looping.
So Fmod is queuing in these wave files at the exact moment that they should be to where the horns are in sync with the drums, but they don't have to play all the time?
Right. It's kind of like, it basically has a time, like a click that it's sticking to. And so it'll be like, when you'll say, I don't know how much music you know, but like, it only can come in like once every 4 measures.
Okay.
And so then it's like, it's going to come in at a part that feels good.
So you're feeding it like wave or MP3 data or something, and then it knows the tempo.
Right.
Programming the tempo.
Yeah, and you go like, this stinger's going to sound good.
It's a 64 measure loop.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know that if the battle music comes in, you know it's measure 36 right now, and so bring in those strings at measure 36.
Right.
Fmod does that?
Yeah, it can do that.
So I need to learn Fmod.
Yeah, it's great. It's a little finicky sometimes. You have to be a little careful with the fades and everything. So usually I treat it as like there's kind of your safety layer that's like, it doesn't matter, you know, like you can have a moment of dramatic tension where it's like everything drops down for a measure and then the big stuff comes in. Is sometimes the safest way to do it, so you just don't get that click from like the actual like timeline scrubbing at the wrong spot.
So I've been doing this forever, but I use just 3 or 4 separate wave tracks that are always synced and have the exact same length, and I just fade between different like mixer snapshots.
Yeah, totally.
Audio levels, but that would save me some resources.
Yeah, it's a little funky because then you have to like, Fmod doesn't have it built into it. You're basically just saying like, hey, I'm creating a new MIDI, like, or a new thing that's like between 1 and 10 that I'm applying to different areas. And I'm telling it like, if it's at 1, then these tracks are all muted, this one is not. And so like a lot of times you can just do it by telling it to mute or unmute tracks. And then it has a probability of playing. That's actually was originally built for making like ambient noise. So you know it's like when you're building like an ambient track, rather than like have like the bird calls happen at the same time, you just say like 5% of bird call, 10% of frog, you know, and so like then it creates kind of this, yeah, and so what you get is you get this procedurally generated like 10 or 20 minute track that sounds randomized. Right, because we just notice so fast with our ears if it's like that frog, like I enter the level and then I hear a frog 2 seconds later, it's like you notice that. I mean, it's like all the old games were terrible, like StarCraft would just hard loop back to this, I mean, they create a 2-minute track for a thing that lasts 30 minutes every time. And you go like, you had a structure and you did not fill it. Which was mostly just because back then like sound files were kind of the main thing that was like keeping your, sound files are still enormously huge. They're huge compared to the games. Yeah. So one of the things that really helps for this too is it keeps your assets way down, because you can really just be doing this with like 4 measure loops. And then you can also do things like, one thing that I'll do sometimes to create like rising tension is most of them have an EQ of some point. So that's just like anytime you hear like a EDM track, like go boom, 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 bum, 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 and you get more of the upper register. So if you do like a really slow EQ sweep that you go like, when you get here, it has this feeling of like, because you're getting more of the overtones, it starts to feel bigger. And it's like really all about like faking perfectly put together dramatic tension. Because it's like if you do film scoring, it's all about like, I have this cue, I know if I go at 122.3 beats per second, I'm gonna hit this spot at just the right part, have the stinger happen. In video games, it's like, the thing I always tell my students, like they might go make a sandwich. How is your music gonna deal with this for 4 hours? Like what is it gonna do? Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're kind of like, so the 2 main middlewares are Fmod and Wise, and they're sort of like half a programming language and half a DAW or digital audio workstation. So they're friendly if you've used Pro Tools or Cubase or Reaper or Logic or any of those. Like it looks familiar, but then you can press the button and actually see the code as well. And how they usually work is they'll sync up with Unity or one of those. And so basically, the way they're usually used is you'll run the game, and then you'll like, a lot of times it's for sound effects as well. So say like you fire a shotgun in the game while it's analyzing it, then it'll actually tell you like event, shoot, shotgun.
So Unity or Unreal are using Fmod as a plugin?
Unity has its own, and so does Unreal. They're just not as good.
But they can use it as a plugin?
Yes, you can use it as a plugin. But both Unity and Unreal both have sound engines. They're just like, they don't have all of the features. It's like mostly in those, I don't know if have you used those before?
I made the official tutorials for them.
Yeah, so like Unity's is like, it'll do like pitch shifting, because that's a big thing for saving, like if you're doing like a shotgun, like you use one sound effect and you go like and then pitch shift it down, so you don't have 2 sounds. So it has all of those in it, but it doesn't really have automation, and so that's where you can.
Oh, you gotta check it out. They do now.
Oh, it does?
It's a DAW now.
Really?
Oh, like the mixer snapshots, it's amazing.
Oh, awesome.
It's like Pro Tools.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just sitting there.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been like a couple years since I was just like, okay, Unity, you don't have the thing. Yeah.
Until Unity 5, it came out in Unity 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's part of why I made the official tutorials for the navigation,
Mm-hmm.
and the new audio mixer system. Because I run a recording studio, that's my main thing.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
Before I started doing game development. But yeah, it's amazing.
That's awesome.
Compared to how it used to be, it was all in code and it sucked.
Mm-hmm. You get a musician and you're like, I need to click and drag something.
Yeah, it's not for people that, or it used to not be for people that actually make music.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like you have a real mixer with different channels, and then each game object you
awesome.
can select a different mixer output.
Yeah.
And you can just instantly fade between different snaps.
Oh yeah, because that's the like easy way of doing what I'm talking about with Fmod. It's like you just go like, oh okay, we fade in this thing and it.
You do everything you're talking about, except know where the wave clips are and like clip them in, and it doesn't have all that looping capability. Like that would be something
Gotcha.
right.
Do they have the probability thing in there now? Like probability of playing?
You would have to just code that yourself.
Gotcha.
Random generator.
Yeah. So it's a thing that people have started using for music a lot now. It's really was made for sound effects. I mean, it was so you could say 10% of frog in Swamp. Like that's what it's built for. And it wasn't built for music because the idea was just like you have like a ribbit and like you're not worried about that clipping or anything. You're just like play it at random times so it sounds natural. But yeah, so a lot of people have started doing the Fmod thing where it's like, oh, you can use this to create basically Brian Eno style procedurally generated music that you can write 30 seconds of music, throw it on there, and then like have it last for half an hour and just sound like an ambient album. Yeah. Yeah, no. I think that's what I got. But basically, yeah, the thing that I would always say is like, for the sound, if you step and basically do it I always say it's really like a choose your own adventure. It's like a storyboard, but then it's like, but the player could also die. What do we do? Do we keep it going? One of the examples of this I always think about is I always feel like if the music changes after a loading screen, it feels like you went for a long time. Like, so it's like, say if there's there's this conceit that I always really like for like really long staircases. So it's like you go down to the next level and then there's a loading screen. And it's like if you used an asset of this like crazy spiral staircase and you do a few footsteps heading down, and then the music changes when you get there, it's like, man, it took like 5 minutes to walk down those stairs. Like there's this idea of like, you showed a picture of a staircase and you did some walking sounds and then the music changed, and it's like, you kind of implanted the memory of your character walking down the stairs even though you never actually showed it, because you were like, picture of stairs, sound of stairs, new music. But if the music stays the same, then it's like, oh, this was just took a long wait time to like take a step through this doorway. So, it's like the music doesn't change, and it's like, and then it freezes, and you see a picture of a door, and then it's like, okay, now we're in the next spot. So a lot of times, I really think like music's kind of the way, especially with film, it's like, it's what gives the idea of passage of time to whatever you do. And so knowing how to hack that and kind of cheat it is, for me, that's kind of the fun part of video games, trying to make it fit that non-linearity. Cool. Any other questions? Awesome. Thanks for having me.